What is up, guys? This is Bradley. You're listening to the Charm City Sideline podcast. I'm here alongside Zach and Dawson, and we are reacting to a Ravens 24-19 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles. Ravens fall to 8-5 going into the bye. It's kind of weird that even though they did end up losing by one score, kind of the first time the Ravens have lost by a decent margin. Didn't feel like it came down to the last play, definitely this season, and kind of maybe in a long time. But Zach, I guess we'll start with you first. What are your initial thoughts coming out of this game, and how you're feeling?
I'm just pretty disappointed. It felt like, one of those big games that Lamar and the offense really take over and honestly just kind of take off with. Like, we're kind of used to seeing the Ravens play an NFC team and dominate them, like, even if they're really good. And this time, we talked about in the preview, it's like this team is like really, really well built in the Eagles. And they really showed us. Like, they kind of handed it to us in the run game and made us deal with our own medicine. And it sucked to watch. We got really, really bullied and dominated in almost all facets of the game.
Yeah, it was definitely an ugly game for our boys tonight, and it was kind of intimidating because at first, they came out the gates firing and started off the game very strong, and it kind of looked like, very reminiscent of the Bills game we saw in week 4. But, from there, the Eagles took over. They kind of bullied us and put us down in our own home stadium, and it just didn't look good for them down the stretch, man. We got out physical. They were too physical for us, and we just played a really ugly game, man. The offense kind of hit a rock bottom, and the defense kind of was holding on to the very end. And then, you can only ask so much from them. And then the special teams tonight, man, were just absolute disaster. I would say probably costed us the game for sure. And it sucks, but now we enter a bye week, and I would say this team definitely needs.
Yeah, and the Ravens, like you guys mentioned, started off really well. Let's see, I'm pulling up play-by-play real quick. They got the field goal at the beginning of the game, and then that Mark Andrews touchdown, a great play from Lamar to Mark, and then kind of all started there with the missed Tucker extra point. Eagles end up having a nice drive in that second quarter. It's Dallas got it for the 17-yard touchdown. Then Eagles have another nice drive with a Jalen Hurts push touchdown, and Ravens get a field goal, 14-12 at half, and then Eagles just dominated the second half in this one. Ravens really couldn't get anything going. See a comment. I know this loss isn't all on Tucker, but he's a big reason why we keep falling behind in games. I get it. He was the GOAT, but now he's a liability. Dawson, what are your thoughts on that comment?
I mean, I couldn't agree anymore. Sir Cream's a lot. He's absolutely a liability. He's costed us, I would say, a few games this season for sure. And I won't sit here and lie to you. When he comes marching on the field, I'm very nervous if he misses the kick or not, whether it's an extra point or a field goal nowadays. And it's really sad because the fall from grace for Tucker, man, has been something none of us expected, none of us wanted to see. And it's ultimately a huge reason why this team is struggling in games. You can't leave points on the board, especially going up against a really good Eagles team. And today we left, I think, 7 on the board, 2 missed field goals and a missed extra point, which has unfortunately become the norm for Justin Tucker this season, and it really sucks. Obviously, he's been great for us over the last decade. He's been fantastic, the best kicker, arguably the best of all time. But, the last 2 seasons have been very rough for him. And like this comment said, he's costing us games. He's the reason we're falling behind. And it's a lack of effort from the whole special teams unit as a whole. And, I don't want to sit here and jump ship on Tucker, but I do 100% believe that it is time to look in another direction on him. I think you have to bring in competition. And I think that no matter what, if this guy's better, he has to get the nod because right now, especially the expectations for this team, you can't have a kicker out there who's not even borderline like decent this season, who's genuinely very inconsistent and missing a lot of big time kicks. And it's a huge, huge problem for Baltimore.
Yeah, that's extremely well said, Dawson. Like, I can't imagine seeing Tucker play another game right now. Like, for the Ravens, it's looking really, really bad. Like, this week was the final straw, right? Like, it takes a really, really big game, national media attention. It's a Super Bowl preview, like all the titles given to this game, and Tucker can't get it done. And it felt kind of weird, missed extra point and then somehow makes a 50-yarder, and I was like, all right, maybe he gets a step in the right direction, and then just can't get it going. So also just with special teams in general, right? Like, Stout's punts really inconsistent. And if he's also an issue in the holding side of it for Tucker's kicks, given it's a bye week, you could see a completely different special teams unit by the next game we play. Like, that's not an exaggeration. And I think since both have been so poor, and especially really, really bringing down a team in this game and in this setting, like, it just feels like that the Ravens are going to make a decision, and it feels like it's a drastic one in order to make sure that this doesn't happen in the playoffs. Because if talk about a fan base like us, if we see Lamar and really the offense get down the field consistently and then are not able to score points because their kicker is just inept. So it's just sad. It makes me sad as a big fan of Tucker. We're all big fans of Tucker, and it's really hard to watch this type of thing happen.
Yeah, and even with like the doom and gloom situation that every loss provides, and Zach, it was a good point to mention, like, the Ravens are going to be in the playoffs this year, and there is a chance that Tucker does this in a playoff game, a high chance that this happens. And I don't know. I mean, the Ravens lose by 5 today, obviously with a garbage time touchdown, but Tucker misses 2 field goals and extra point, 7 points. You're not sure if the Ravens would have won the game or not, but they definitely would have had a chance. There's a comment here. How can we smoke the Bills, keep up with the Chiefs, but all of a sudden we lose what seems to be the easiest games because of simple errors? What can fix this? If Lamar does great, our secondary is trash. It is kind of a good point. Like, it feels like when the offense is playing well, the defense isn't. And when the defense is playing well, the offense isn't. But yeah, it's starting. This is kind of the game that it feels like we're going on a downward slope instead of upward slope. Definitely a much needed bye coming up right now.
I want to say too, real quick, that this was by no means a favorable game for Baltimore, and I don't care what anyone says. The Eagles are a super team. They are absolutely stout across the board, and I know they were missing a couple of guys today as well. You know, we were too, but the Eagles are a very, very good team, and it sucks. Unfortunately, the Ravens couldn't beat them today, but by no means, I don't care if they were favored by 3 points in this game. We knew this was going to be a really tough matchup, and we knew that points were going to be hard to come by. And in the end, unfortunately, the Ravens left a touchdown drive on the board with Tucker's miss, and it sucks. The other units got to pick up the units that are not playing well and kind of provide the extra support on days like this. Unfortunately, they couldn't do it all the way to the end, but the whole special teams tonight as a whole was an absolute disaster. I mean, you got Tucker missing 3 kicks. You have Tylan Wallace. I mean, I don't even know what I don't even know what he was doing on the punt return duty tonight. I mean, he fumbled it, I think, once or twice. He let 2 roll in within the 5-yard line, and just absolute disaster there. I mean, Jordan Stout didn't have the greatest punting all night long. It was just across the board, man. It was horrific. It was awful, awful football. And it's ironic because John Harbaugh is a special teams background coach, came from the Eagles, so it's kind of ironic in that aspect. But it ultimately obviously costed us the game, and it sucks because the defense was playing really good in this game. I mean, they were realistically stepping up to the plate and kind of throwing those punches back at Philly early. But when you have them on the field the entire game in the second half and the offense can't, get anything done, and that's including the special teams, of course, ending the drive in a field goal. But at the end of the day, the entire offense wasn't doing anything in the second half. We couldn't get anything going. And it just sucks, man, because this game is another game that realistically the Ravens could have had. The Ravens could have definitely had this win, fall into their hands, but unfortunately, you know, critical errors and self-made, self-inflicted wounds hurt them again, like all season long. It's a story of the Ravens right now, and I will give the respect to the Eagles. They are a fantastic team. They outplayed us, and they deserve that win 100%. But this bye week couldn't come at a better time, I would say, for the Ravens. I mean, 8-5 realistically is not the worst record in the world. It's not ideal. It's not great, but you're still obviously in prime position to make a playoff push, and hopefully that's what we get this season in Baltimore. And going into this bye week, we have a lot of guys banged up right now. Rashad Bateman left the game with a foot injury, I believe, or an ankle, something of that, or knee, lower leg injury. So hopefully he's okay. But this bye week is much needed for this team right now. We have a lot of injuries. We're fighting a lot of nagging injuries, and kind of like Zach said, they kind of just need to regroup. They need to figure something out moving forward, whether that's a huge personnel change on the special teams unit potentially a kicker, a new punt returner. I don't know. It just something needs to happen because if you roll into the next part of the season, before the playoffs with this kind of football, it's not going to happen. Nothing's going to be made in the playoffs. And unfortunately, like Brad said too, if this team plays like this in the playoffs, man, it's not going to be good. It's going to be really ugly.
I'd love to talk about Robert talked about the O line here in a comment that we have, but really the penalties I thought today that was a great part of our game today. Like not a lot of holding, not a lot of defensive stuff, nothing nagging. 4 penalties is what I'm reading. Like I would say we could hang our hat on that. We could hang our hat on really how the defense played today. I think it was just mostly with weird play calling from Monken, kind of having like some inconsistent passing from Lamar and I'm not saying that those two are to blame for this game, as I would lean more on just special teams and really just being outcoached in general. But it felt like kind of the right way to start the game, and it felt like the recipe to win the game and in good fashion, like we just mentioned. 9-0 start, and you miss that extra point. It's like crap, just like Two Federal saying here. Like this might not go our way, and Eagles found what worked. Ravens kind of lost what did, and it ended up being what changes the game, even with no turnovers on both sides. Like I think that happened last week too. It really was decided by like a few special teams plays because we outran them today, we outpassed them today. Everything looks like we would have won the game. 372 total yards to 252, and you lose the game. Like it's about finishing drives, but it's also about just getting points, and that's the Achilles heel of the team right now.
John Harbaugh just said that he's not going to move on from Justin Tucker. He says, I don't think that would be wise. I wanted to dive into that topic a little bit more. What would you guys do? I guess I can't ask what you think they're going to do anymore, but what would you guys do in this situation?
I would have multiple kickers tomorrow morning in Owings Mills, Maryland, in the castle for kicking tryouts tomorrow at 8 a.m. sharp. I would 100% bring in competition, and I get it. You don't want to move on from Tucker. That's fine. He's still arguably the greatest kicker of all time, and I completely understand not immediately going, all right, step aside. We got a new guy. But a few weeks ago, I believe it was about a month ago, this question came up because Tucker started struggling pretty heavily, and they said absolutely not. No competition's needed. Tucker will figure it out. Here we are in week 13 now, and it's getting worse, and it's costing you games closer to playoff time, and it's absolutely unacceptable. So I can't speculate on what the Ravens will do, what I think they'll do. But however, if I'm in a situation where I'm in control of this, I'm 125% bringing in competition over the course of the bye week. And I'm talking literally anybody on the free agent market, anybody that wants to kick in the National Football League. And I'm at least showing Tucker that you have to get it together, dude, because your job's not safe. I don't care what contract you're under, because I think we just signed him to a pretty large extension not too long ago. I am definitely looking at the free agent market and bringing in competition because at the very least it shows him that your job is not safe and we may look elsewhere if you don't get it figured out.
Yeah, to put it blunt, I don't like that Harbaugh just comes out and says that. I think that's an internal thing. Even if the reporters keep asking it, I think you have to say that it's going to be dealt with internally and figure it out, because I totally agree with you, Dawson. I think you have to bring in some kind of competition. You have a bye week. Like something has to shock Tucker back into it, or else you're going to lose yet another game, hopefully not in the playoffs this way, and you're going to look like an idiot. And us fans are going to be calling it since week 13. That's inexcusable. That's unacceptable. And I think Harbaugh and them can make that decision. They're very capable of doing it. And I'm not totally sure what the free agent market is with kickers, but someone's out there, a few guys are probably out there that can at least scare them and show them that, hey, while we're on bye, oh yeah, 4 kickers tried out for us and they look pretty darn good. They didn't miss any extra points. Like, basic stuff like that. And I don't appreciate that Harbaugh said that. And I also think that the Ravens definitely need to do that, Dawson. I'm echoing you.
That's what concerns me too, is that we have a coach now who has a track history of being reluctant to make changes when they need to be made. And that's what worries me about the situation, because I 110% believe that Tucker could continue these struggles all the way through the rest of the season, and we will never see them bring in competition. We will never see them make a change, and they'll just keep saying every week, he's our guy. We trust him. We trust him until you lose a playoff game, and then it's going to be a whole situation, or it's shoulda, woulda, coulda, and something that could have been avoided. So that's what worries me. That we know what changes need to be made. Obviously, we're fans. We watch the game just as much as anyone else, and we see the things that need to be done. And it just worries me because not even half hour since the game ended, and Harbaugh is already coming out that we're pretty much not doing anything. Like, he's still our guy, which I completely understand. Like I said, but it scares me because it goes way more deeper than just the kicker. There's a lot of offensive line personnel changes right now that could be made potentially. You got Deontay Johnson not even getting looks on the offensive side of the ball. There's a lot of things right now that 100% go right towards the coaching, and it's a lot of questionable calls, and I don't really understand why it's happening. However, all we can do as fans is sit here and watch and just hope that they make the right calls. Um, but also, going off what you said real quick about the kickers, Zach, who knows what the market is in free agency for kickers? But all I know is there's always kickers that are ready to come in and play. And at any time, you see teams all the time go out and snipe these free agent kickers when somebody goes down to injury or something, and they do just fine. They're serviceable. They're not out here missing extra points. They're not out here missing 40-yard field goals like it's clockwork. It's kind of scary to think about because, I understand the whole issue about, oh, it's the holding, it's Jordan Stout, holding. I get that. It 100% could be because it's no coincidence that the last 2 years are the worst of Tucker's career, and those are the 2 years of Jordan Stout now holding his field goal attempts rather than, legendary Sam Cook. And I understand that. However, if you are one of, if not the greatest kicker of all time, you 100% need to make the changes that are needed to adapt to the new, setting, if you would, to make a change and hopefully become good at kicking again. So that's what worries me too, is that we haven't really seen a change in it yet. It's kind of just been a weekly thing at this point. There's not really any confidence moving forward that, oh, we're figuring this out or this change is going to be made. So I'm worried for the long run just as much as anyone else, man. I think this is something that could catch up to the Ravens come playoff time. And if that happens, man, it's going to be devastating.
Exactly. And I had a few game notes because this was the first time I really was like taking notes as the game went on, just so I mentioned this stuff. Like, sure, we talked about Tucker. Like, I think the offense started pretty hot and then got so cold. And even the defense was super good and then lost a step. Like, it really made me think that, Saquon Barkley is legitimately the MVP, which is pretty incredible, running back and all, and how confident we were in Lamar just maybe winning this game even and then getting back to it. It turned out to be pretty devastating just to watch him, do what's inevitable and really end the game on us.
What's up, guys?
Hey, man.
Welcome back.
Internet cut out for a second. What were you guys just talking about?
I was just talking about Saquon basically winning Derrick Henry versus Derrick Henry game. That was pretty impressive.
I mean, I think everyone knew that Saquon. So I think everyone knew that Saquon is a more explosive back, maybe the better overall back. I mean, he got a lot more money than Derrick Henry did, for a reason. Definitely going to run the. I think Saquon has a case for MVP this year. Not going to lie, I think he really does.
100%.
Some more comments here. Ravens did everything, contained Barkley for the most part, made Hurts throw, but just left a lot of plays on the field today. Unacceptable. Guys, something that I wanted to talk about is just that, like, this game really, really reminded me of a playoff loss. Like, this is exactly what playoff losses feel like for the Ravens. Like, I don't know. You compare this to, like, the Chiefs game and the Titans in 2019. Like, the Tucker misses. Has Tucker missed a field goal in every loss this year? I mean,
yeah, I think that's a real stat.
Every playoff loss is like Ravens are playing well at the beginning. Tucker misses a field goal. Other team starts to play really well late first quarter, second quarter, and then it kind of just falls apart from there. And they don't really get blown out, but it's not exactly a close game either. And that's what was interesting about this one, is that it wasn't a one-score game. Obviously, it ended like that. But I don't know. Did you guys talk about when I was having my hiatus? Did you talk about either Deontay Johnson or Marcus Williams? I mean, I've seen Harbaugh's basically said that he doesn't want to get into the Deontay Johnson not playing and, like, it's basically same thing. Well, Marcus Williams, he said he was a healthy scratch. I mean, what's your guys' take on the Deontay Johnson situation? Because Rashad Bateman got injured today, and no one saw the injury, but he was out immediately, and it might not be like a short-term injury. I'm not sure. And like Deontay Johnson needs to be on the field in the future, especially if Bateman's going to be injured.
It's so weird because I literally think Deontay Johnson didn't even play one snap in the game today. I mean, I'm very curious tomorrow morning to see the snap share because I will be surprised if he played 3 snaps in this football game. And it doesn't really make sense because, like you said, Brad, Rashad Bateman goes down, you're clearing away wide receiver 2. So that's a prime, time to throw in Deontay Johnson. Here you go. Go out there and make some plays. And yet we still see him on the sideline wearing a coat, just not even any indication of he's coming into the game. And it doesn't really make sense. I don't understand it. This guy came over and there was not crazy expectations, but there was, obviously some hope that this guy can provide a boost down the stretch. And God forbid an injury comes up in the wide receiver room, you're kind of covered. Like this was an insurance move. And I don't know, man, it's kind of frustrating because he's been here for quite a few weeks now. And I posted on Instagram the other day, kind of gathering some thoughts on it and just kind of where everyone stands. And everyone's kind of in the same boat. No one really knows what's going on. And clearly our coach doesn't either. He kind of just mentioned that he wants to get some more information on it before he speculates and addresses the issue. But it's kind of odd. I hope that Rashad Bateman's injury is not anything long term. Hopefully in a perfect world that he comes off fresh, from the bye week and he's playing in New York following the bye. That would be great. However, if he doesn't, I do still think that Deontay Johnson could play a prime role in this offense. And I don't see why he wouldn't be able to. There's nothing stopping him. There's nothing in the way of him receiving playing time. And hell, at this point, I would maybe consider putting him back there on punt return duty. Has the experience there. And with given how bad I would say Tylan Wallace, played on special teams tonight, there has to be obviously a change there soon, I would hope. I don't know. It's a very weird situation. It's kind of one of those doghouse situations where it's kind of like, why is he not playing? There's nothing stopping him, and he's just sitting on the sideline. We've seen that in the past with John Harbaugh, and I don't know, man. It's a very weird situation.
I wanted to comment on Two Farrell mentioned the defense didn't take a step down. I said that as like a second quarter thought. I just was kind of just reading my notes. That was my bad. But I totally agree with you guys. Deontay's got to be out there. Like, I don't know what the deal is, if he's maybe not totally caught up on the playbook, if he's not giving, full effort in practice and stuff. I would love to know a reason. I just want to know something. And besides that, he's talented. And especially when Bateman goes out, this is a perfect comment. If Bateman goes out, why else did we get Deontay? I mean, do we want Nelson Aguilar and Tylan?
That's why they got him.
Exactly. And the way that Tylan was playing today, how nervous we were even when he was just on the field. Like, I don't know. I don't get why you wouldn't have Deontay play a few snaps, if any, just to see what sparks, if anything sparks. And especially sparks in a half where you're being shut out. Like, I'm not going to count that last second touchdown. Like, if we get shut out in the second half and you're not willing to explore different routes, are we okay with like the insanity of staying completely the same and hoping that it'll change? It's not going to change. So something's got to happen.
It's just like, go ahead, Dawson.
I'm just going to say Zach said that perfectly. It's scary to have a coach that, has a track history of being reluctant to make the moves that need to be made. And I honestly don't know if the Ravens make any moves here to hopefully solidify these positions right now that have been unfortunately hurting Baltimore.
Have we talked about the punt return game yet? I can't even remember.
A little bit. Just mentioned it with like special teams.
There's a comment. And like Tylan Wallace, I've really paid attention to special teams a lot, and it's something, it's a third of the game. And I've noticed ever since, so the Ravens come in this year and finally sign like a return specialist, kind of the first one we've had since Jacoby Jones, I feel like. And when Deontay Hardy, he goes down with an injury, unfortunate situation. But Tylan Wallace never catches the ball. He had a muff today that kind of everyone forgot about because the Ravens recovered it, and there was also a penalty.
Yeah.
Combined with the fact, like, we had the ball at our own 5, own 1 multiple times because of Tylan Wallace not catching punts. And it is interesting because we're talking about right now about Deontay Johnson and you can think back to guys in the past, think about David Ojabo right now. Guys simply just are not playing football. And it's not even that they've made serious mistakes when Tylan Wallace is kind of making 3 or 4 mistakes a game returning punts. I know they got Rasheen Ali back there on kicks, who made a couple nice plays, but I think a definite buy situation thing to discuss is getting a new punt returner back there. Maybe Deontay Hardy can come back, but that's another thing I don't understand is why does Tylan Wallace continue to field these punts?
Yeah, I don't get it either. I really wish that – I hope that it does get addressed. I don't know the deal on Deontay Hardy either. If he were to come back, that would be fantastic after the bye. That would be much needed and give us, a little more comfortability. But I'm very confused with Tylan and his really punt return, his calls, his stuff to decide. And it's turned into another kind of part of being uneasy watching it happen. And I think it can easily be changed. Perfect comment here from Henry. Deontay can return punts. What else is he doing right now? Like let him try. Let anyone try. Even Ali, I was pretty eye-opened from that. I wanted him to do it.
He did a great
again.
return.
Exactly. Like why not just let him do it again? If he does it again and does it pretty well, he ends the job. Shoot. I mean, why aren't we letting, these guys when they get the opportunity and make their opportunity well worth it? Why don't we let them keep going? And sure, someone like Deontay hasn't had that chance, and if he has, it hasn't been a lot of a chance. So I hope after the bye he can be really acclimated into the offense and maybe even special teams. Someone else needs to be doing it. I think we love Tylan and his ability to make the big plays, but I think it's about time that we let someone else have those reins.
Yeah, and I agree. I think you guys lost me on the camera here, which I'm not sure what happened there. But another thing I speculated too, or that, kind of crossed my mind was the healthy and active of Keaton Mitchell, which he's been back there on kick returns. And at the very least, you have a guy who can catch, and you have a guy with a very serious speed element. And at the very worst, in a game where Tylan Wallace is very clearly struggling, you got to at least make a move, I would say, mid-game to hopefully shore up that unit. I don't understand how you can keep trotting a guy out there time after time when he keeps making these mistakes, which almost, I mean, in the end, of course, we lost, but almost cost you the game, given, the Eagles almost recovered a couple and set us up with very, very poor field position. So I don't understand. That's another thing I was kind of getting frustrated with was we weren't making the mid-game adjustments necessary to get rid of these problems. We kept just kind of going in hoping that it would change when ultimately it never did.
There's a comment from Henry about what the Ravens did to stop A.J. Brown in the second half, and this is something we haven't really talked about today. I mean, Eagles scored 24 points. I think we probably would have taken that coming into this one. I think Zach Orr had a good game. Ravens put Marlon Humphrey on the outside. So normally, since the injury of Millette and having to move Hamilton to one of the two deep safeties, Humphrey's been in the slot with Stevens and Wiggins on the outside, and they just said, Marlon, you're guarding A.J. Brown, and he did. Honestly, probably hurt the Ravens in the run game a little bit with having Marlon Humphrey outside. He's great in the run game, great to have blitzing off the corner. So, yeah, I think Zach Orr had a good game today.
Mm-hmm.
You got any thoughts on him and his adjustments, Zach?
Absolutely. I mean, you want to talk about the best part of this game? It was Zach Orr and his calls on defense. Like, shoot, you have those 3 touchdown drives, and that's inevitable against a very talented Eagles team and the way that they can move up and down the field. But like, there was not really any of those like big explosive plays, even from running. There would be an occasional Saquon like 11, 13-yard gain, but that's inevitable, right? So if you don't have Devontae Smith for them and A.J. Brown is the main guy to beat you, and you can take him out of the game like that in the second half, you're giving every single option for the offense to be able to come back in this game. And frankly, we should have. I think the biggest note I had was the third quarter felt like we absolutely dominated it and had 0 points to show for it. 12 minutes of possession, 2 drives that you get all the way down the field and you have 0 points to show. That's how you lose a football game. And the fact that you can't punch it in, especially with how good our red zone offense has been, you can't punch it in, and that's how you lose. And no offense in the second half of a game absolutely is what's going to kill you, especially against whenever your defense is trying as much as they can to stop the NFL MVP right now. Like, they did everything they could. They played such a great game. All you could have asked for is maybe like a turnover or something, but even then is asking too much. They played so good. Zach Orr called a great game. I'm super, super thrilled with how they're doing. really just in the second half of the season so far. And going into a bye, I expect them to be just as good after it.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously always try to find ways to cope with the loss, and with all the respect, that's what fans do. But in this one, I mean, I will take away, like you said at the beginning of the podcast too, Zach, that the Ravens didn't have a ton of penalties tonight, and they did play a pretty clean game. And obviously, that's not something we're used to. They've been the most penalized team in the NFL up to this point, and by quite a big margin to say that. And tonight there was, I think you said 4, which is a very big
Yeah.
positive for the team moving forward against a very
Mhm.
physical team too. You know, so that's a great takeaway, as well as the defense also playing pretty good. Especially the way they've played the last few weeks. They've definitely been on an uphill climb, and it's getting better, I would say, on that side of the ball. And I just got to hope that, they keep building and stacking these positive games and these, big time matchups, especially too. I mean, God, you're playing a fantastic team in Philly. And, unfortunately, in the end, we lost, but they stepped up to the plate and they were playing very physical. Zach Orr called a fantastic game. And I mean, that's got to be a positive takeaway, as well as, it's been the last few weeks. And I 100% believe that the Ravens will be healthy coming out of this bye week, and they will come out firing against a very favorable matchup in the New York Giants. So we just got to trust the process. We got to trust that we can win these couple games down the road or down the stretch that are going to be very favorable in Baltimore's favor. Just it's really tough to lose games like this, especially when the things that happen that ultimately cost you the game could have been avoided.
And the last thing I really want to add is about, in a game like this where you're favored to win it, it's at home. Really, all the eyes in the NFL are watching this game, thinking this is potential Super Bowl matchup. Is this where the MVP gets decided? And one side of it really kind of falls apart. The weeks after it, especially going into a bye, how they handle it after a bye is going to tell you everything you need to know about if there is any playoff push that's inevitable for the Ravens, and if it's even possible. Like, if we go into the Giants and Tucker misses one kick, maybe he makes 3, like, we're still going to be sitting there like, he still had that miss, like, no matter what, right? So the way that the Ravens can handle it is making these adjustments and finishing this year right. You have to finish this year right, and against pretty good competition. You play the Steelers again, who we know have our number. You have to go against Texans. Texans are a talented team, and that's going to be another test for us. And you have to beat teams pretty well now. Like, this is the end of the year where you're at 8-5. You're going to have to be struggling for your playoff position right now. I think, you're sitting pretty comfortable to make the playoffs, but it's going to depend on who you want to play. And if you're going to want to play, the Bills, or you're going to want to play the Steelers again, it's really picking your poison because you have such control over it. But it's no joke with these other teams that are at the bottom of the AFC really pushing and making big strides near the end of the year. And you don't want to play someone like them either. Like, there's so much weighing on these last few weeks that you need to correct in order to make this push, because we know that this team is capable of doing it. If the defense can play this good this late in the year after how they started, and then the offense starts to fall apart, they got to pick up slack too and get right back to where we know they can be and make a real push, because we know they're capable of doing it, but it's in the wrong direction right now.
You also got to take into effect that this team has played 13 straight weeks of football, and we've played a lot of really, really physical games. And it's just, no matter who you are, how good of a team you are, I mean, that is going to catch up to you. That is going to be an absolute brutal thing to take on. And we usually have like a week 8 or 9, 10 absolute latest bye week. And here we are with a week 14 bye week, man. I mean, realistically, before the season, we all kind of looked at this and we're like, holy, like, that's not good. And obviously the matchups we've had recently are very tough. So we kind of knew at this time that the Ravens were going to be a very questionable team. Who knows what the injury report was going to look like? Who knows, the momentum they were going to have, the record, how they were going to be playing. And I mean, all else is failing. 8-5 is not a terrible record, and I will gladly take that going into a bye week.
Yeah. And there was a comment that I don't know if we addressed from Mills, up 9-0, third and short. Jackson misses throw low to wide open Zay Flower. That was probably the turning point of the game. It's so hard to assess Lamar's play when there's 4, 5, 6, 7 plays a game where he's avoiding a sack, completing a 35-yard bomb to Flowers. But then he's also missing a throw like this. And I'll say that the past 3 games, he's been sort of like more of a human and not a robot. I'd say, up until that Steelers game, Lamar was having probably the best season of all time from a quarterback, and it's really not really fallen off, but he sort of played more to a level of an elite quarterback recently instead of the best season of all time, and I think that's definitely played a role in the Steelers' loss and this loss. But that means the team's not good enough if you're losing games because your quarterback doesn't play perfect. Obviously, Tucker missing 7 points has a lot to do with that. But yeah.
It's such an ugly way to enter a bye week. I mean, it just really sucks, man.
Yeah, you don't, and it was a good point, Dawson. The Ravens have played 13 weeks straight of football. I mean, how often does that happen? I don't know. I wonder if that's the most weeks of football Harbaugh's played consecutively in his time as a coach. Definitely a much needed bye week.
Mm-hmm.
Ravens could win out, go 12-5. They could finish 9-8. It's going to come down to the bye week and how they address it and what they address, and hopefully they come out against the Giants and win a nice blowout game, and then they have that 3-game in 10-day stretch that they'll have right after that. So, you guys got anything else?
No.
I think that's it. We'll enjoy the bye week. I think we need it, man. Mental break. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's all from us tonight. Appreciate you guys for joining. We did have, I believe, the most viewers we've ever had live. I think I got up to 47 peak viewers. So appreciate everyone for being here. Like the video, helps us out a lot. Subscribe also if you aren't already. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.